Okay, the rules are very simple, so pay attention. The task: blitz through as many statements in 30 minutes. The panel will give their opinions on each statement, but they will have to work together to agree or disagree on the statements before moving on to the next. Your panel for episode 1. From Long Island, the man of 1,000 PCs, Johnny Tancredi. From Brantford, Ontario, Canada, the wizard, Graeme Reid. From the University City, the film fan, it's Jamie Stocker. Welcome to the run-in.
I would agree with that. I think that Panini has done a fantastic job with the WWE license over the last year and a half to 2 years now. I think that collectors have really gotten used to the quality of the cards, the releases coming out for the most part on time, the promotion that I think Panini has done with promoting the products, and some of the bigger licenses within Panini that we've received, like Select and Prism, being now staples in the wrestling hobby. I think, although Topps is now under different management than it was when they had the wrestling card hobby a couple of years ago, Fanatics coming in is really a big change, and it seems like what they're doing for other sports, baseball, and they're really they've really changed over there. They're promoting a lot better, and I think things are ultimately they are better now. But we'll have to see what they do for wrestling when that time comes. If they give it the same amount of attention. Releases come out on time, and ultimately we're getting the products that we want. So I think right off the bat, I think yes, it will be a hit to collectors.
I'm going to agree too. I think it's a big hit to collectors, because I think we've only just seen what Panini can offer to the wrestling collector. The image quality is so much better. The card quality is a little bit better. There's a lot more exciting parallels going on. And I think for me, as someone that's not as familiar with Panini, because I just collect wrestling cards, so I'm learning more about Panini through podcasts and learning about how football collectors collect Panini and how basketball players and everything like that. So there's still sets that haven't even come out that we didn't get to experience yet, which is unfortunate, which I think is a big hit. I mean, a little gray area on this too, though. I think it's also kind of exciting for the collector, because this stuff now instantaneously becomes a lot more rare, and it's really exciting that way. And now who knows what the new kind of Topps Fanatics creations are going to be, but I still think it's a huge hit to the collector, because there's a bunch of things that we didn't get to see.
So I agree with both of these guys. The only thing I would say is I do wonder whether or not we will retain any of the people that have come into the hobby over the last 2 years. We've seen an influx of people also doing breaks, a lot more interest in people into wrestling cards in the first place. And whether or not that retains when we have Topps come back in, that will be really seeing whether or not the market dips again, or whether or not it still stabilizes now. People have got a feel for wrestling cards. But Panini themselves, I think Panini have done great things for the hobby. And as both of you guys have just said, there is a time that we've only had 1 or 2 years of some top product, and we are still missing some product, which we'll never probably have. So it'll be seeing what happens in the next couple of years with Topps, really.
Yeah, I think we all agree that
I think we agree.
It's going to take a bit of a hit.
Bummerville to the collector.
Yes.
I 100% agree with this. I think a lot of people go for the Royal Rumble set because you've got this masterclass of rookies within that year. But across the board, there is a set period there of really peak wrestling fandom for many, many people, the Attitude Era. We've got Relics for the very first time in those Fleer sets, which you don't see any time before then, really. And obviously that led for the trend for the future. They've got a variety of autos, which are sort of early autos for many people, the big stars of the day. You've got Austin, Angle, all these guys had big autos, which are early autos for them. And I think really in time, people will only go back to these sets. But I think it really needs people to start talking about these a lot more, as opposed to just the Royal Rumble set. I think that's sort of my line, really.
I'm going to agree on this too. I've been exploring and researching a lot more of the Fleer sets, and there is a bunch of parallels and cards associated with these sets, unique autographs that you don't see in other cards, special match relics and everything like that. I think, and as Jamie said too, people are not talking about these sets as much as they are currently about Panini product, or even the past few years of the Topps product as well. These sets are kind of unearthed, and I think they're starting to be harder to find as well, because maybe they're similar to comic images or even the magazine sets where people are throwing them away. They didn't keep them. They're not in great shape, so even if you do find them, they're probably not in the best of shape either. Even the rarer of cards from the Fleer sets too. I think it is and also I guess there's a bias. There's a total opinion bias for me too, because it is my years of fandom in wrestling. So they tell the story. They tell a great story for me. So yeah.
I'm going to disagree. Actually, I think it's pretty. I think it's rated how it should be. I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't say it's underrated. I necessarily wouldn't say it's overrated. I think it's kind of just like the popularity level is kind of where it should be. I do agree with the relics and the autos. They were definitely ahead of its time in terms of like the different unique relics that we were getting, milk cartons and gold medal ribbons and all that stuff. I think that's great, and it's stuff that we hadn't seen before, and we really still aren't seeing in terms of match dated or specific stuff, which I would hope we get in the future. But I think with a lot of the Fleer products, I wasn't crazy about a lot of the inserts. I think some of the inserts were a little more plain. I'm a flashier card guy. I do like my refractors. I do like my foils and my parallels. I think the quality control wasn't always there. A lot of the stuff that I still find out now, and a lot of it could also be from the collector themselves, but it's not the best quality. A lot of whitening on the edges, and it's not obviously it's not chromium stock as much as what we're known for now and everything. And so yeah, I think although it's a good time in wrestling cards, I think it was the beginning of the capabilities of what we saw later on, especially with what Topps was doing, and after that with the Chrome Heritage and stuff like that, and some of the stuff we got after. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a bad set or a good set. I think it's kind of where it's supposed to be.
I think that the Fleer set the standard for future card sets. I think if we didn't have the Fleer era, we wouldn't have had the Topps releases that we had. And in God's other sports, I think Fleer kind of set that tone. And that's where my sort of stand is from there. But again, I'm a big Fleer fanboy, so I'm going to take a lot of deterrent on this.
I kind of agree. I'm going to agree with Jamie, to be honest, too. Like, I understand what you're saying. It Johnny, where it sits where it should sit, but I do think there are underrated elements to it. And the only reason huge little shout out here to Squared Circle Relics podcast, by the way. That's where you learn a lot about it, in-depth details about kind of this Fleer product, which is there's so much stuff there that I didn't even know about that. And that's why I have new save searches looking for things all the time, because it's even just exciting, even if you're not going to add it to your collection, to watch it pop up and see how people get excited about it, because some of the stuff is really rare.
Yeah, I think you guys can convince me to agree. I like what Jamie said about being like the predecessor to the Topps stuff that came afterwards, which I do agree with. I don't know if we get some of those relics or autos or serial numbered stuff if it wasn't for Fleer. And I like what Graeme said too about the Fleer stuff kind of being like an enigma in a way. It's really starting to come out now. I'm actually doing a lot more Fleer in other sports that I collect. I'm really going back into that era of collecting, and I've been doing the same for wrestling. I can't even lie. So, yeah, I think you convinced me.
We magic killered him, Jamie.
Dude,
put a spell on me. I disagree. I think 95% of my collection is ungraded at this point. I think grading has its perks without a doubt. And if you're a seller, I think it's important because you can see the actual quality of the card, and there really isn't a way to get around that. If you're looking to buy an expensive card, I think it should be graded because you know exactly what you're getting. It's not trimmed. You'll know that it's authentic, and that's really important when you're spending a lot of money on cards. I don't think it's a must though. I think to each their own with the collectors. There's definitely a huge raw card market out there. I'm part of it where I don't feel like I have to grade everything, especially if it's PC. I'm starting to grade some of the stuff that I think is a little bit more rare or more important in my PC, but not everything in my PC will be graded. I do like the look of the slab, and I think that it's fun and it's cool to display. But in terms of a must, I don't think it's a must at all.
Yeah, I don't think grading's a must. If I look at my collection, most of the stuff is raw, and actually, I think most of my desired cards are in one touches. I'm totally a one touch kind of person. I really appreciate the one touch look and everything. I have a bunch of cards in graded form too, in different slabs, but there's something about me, the aesthetic of in a PSA slab, I don't like the edge so much on it. I don't like holding it. It doesn't feel so great in my hands, but it's kind of cool. But at the edge for me but a one touch is so nice. And then other slabs, there's just always something about it that I'm like, I'm not totally sold on the asset. I don't know. Just the card on its own is really neat. And I think there's still something unique that you can still get to the actual raw card itself without having to crack it open or destroy it or anything like that. When you think about it too, the whole grading thing is really personal opinion when it comes down to it. Like, I guess outside of now we're seeing things like tag grading with AI and everything, but it does come down to someone's opinion on the card. So it is questionable, I guess. For me, it's just building a collection of fun cards that, tell a cool story and everything like that. So I think raw cards for me are the way to go. And I like to put them in one touches like I'm a serial killer from Dexter.
I don't think grading is a must either. I think it really comes down to the type of collector you are and your intentions as well. If you're a big seller or sort of, a rookie hunter or sort of that treasure hunter type thing, I think you have to get them graded just because of that resale value. I think if you're collecting for your own collection, I agree with Graeme 100% that one touches is what I do just because they fit into the boxes I have. They're cheap to buy. They still keep things safer than a top loader. And as I say, they do look nice. I would say that anything vintage, I would always try and get something graded purely for the protection as opposed to a value side of things. Some of these older cards, like they're only going to deteriorate over time, even if you penny sleeve and top load them, no matter how much protection you try and give them. So I think you have to grade those if you've got that type of thing. And I agree with Johnny as well. The more rarer stuff, I would like to grade as well. Things like these promotional cards or these, old sets that you had to redeem by sending off magazines or bills or these old type things, I think they would be quite nice to grade. And again, it does come down to aesthetics as well. Like some cards look nicer in a PSA slab, others look nicer in a Beckett. And I think that comes down to personal choice as opposed to a must. So I agree. I don't think it's a must either. It depends on who's collected and what they're collecting for.
I think we all agree.
Yeah.
PSA, PS, nay.
Oh, I've got to stick to the boys over the pond, haven't I, really? And I'm not going to talk any more about it from there.
I'm gonna say, so you said squared circle over CFP, correct? And then I'm going with that is correct, I think. I think the boys across the pond have made a show that it's for the collector, it's by the collector. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying that the second, the prequel, the sequel is better than the original sometimes. So why not? I'll give the boys over there a nice little plug.
I'm gonna false finish this one right to the end, I think. When Squared Circle Relics for me is the perfect wrestling card binge. The length, I love a longer podcast. I feel like I'm involved in the conversation completely the whole time, and I feel like I'm learning way too much information each episode. So you kind of go back and you can listen to them 2 or 3 times. When you listen to the Card Foundation podcast, it's like you're hanging out with the boys, having the best time around cards, really just relaxing, taking it easy, talking about the newest topics and trends. Plus, there's the uniqueness of the group and some real characters that have been created around the Card Foundation podcast and that Facebook group too. Squared Circle Relics has some unique games that are always tossed out in that Facebook group that keep it lively and a little cheeky at the same time. So that's really fun. I love both senses of humor, but for me personally, I do lean towards Squared Circle Relics podcast.
Yeah, listen, what I'll say is, well, I wouldn't mind if you checked out the Card Foundation podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your favorite podcasts each and every Thursday. I think I agree with Graeme in the sense that, listen, my show, I think I like what you said. It's a hangout with the boys. It's, goofing around. It's the jokes. It's, Danny and Danny Drip and all that, P Bear, and it's great. And I love recording every week. We're almost 150 episodes in. It's been a lot of fun. But I think the way that I collect and I've kind of emerged as a collector, I would agree with Graeme in the sense that, like, the style of CFP of being a little bit more of a collector show where, they're talking about, nerdier aspects of the hobby. That's where I tend to go. A lot of the podcasts I listen to in the hobby are that style. They're breaking down rare parallels and inserts and sets that, most people don't even know about, as opposed to just talking about, Prism and whatever and breaking. And that's not how I collect. It's not my style. Which is why as soon as, I've been a day one listener of Squared Circle. So that's my pitch.
I think as well, like, talking about the CFP side of things, I didn't go too much. I kind of whimmed away from it, but I think as well, like, if it hadn't been for CFP, I don't think I would have had the balls to maybe, come together with a couple of guys from the UK and actually do a podcast. I always felt like I was like on an island, and without CFP, I kind of felt that was the only podcast that I was able to listen to about cards, and it was in the US. So there was a totally different feel there for me. And as Graeme said, like, the guys, it is, it feels like it's lads in the pub, but in America, like around a bar, so you still kind of get that same feel. But again, I've got to stick with ATP boys, that's it.
Yeah, I think we all, to be honest, I mean, it's it's a hard finish on the match, right? It's HBK taking down Ric Flair or something like that on this one, and
I'd be fine with that.
I think it's really just they're companion pieces to me. I listen to both enjoyably at the same amount, but if it's really just because I think the episode is longer, I like a lengthier podcast, and that's kind of like the thing that swings it for me a little bit more. I really like the super long, nerdy podcast for me personally.
I'm with you.
So,
and this is the thing. This is a true random headlines here, because this is such an awkward conversation for us to be having. So there you go.
I'm excited to
shout out to the Prez for throwing this curveball in here. I like that.
I'm excited to feel the heat on this after. Oof. I don't know. I don't think breaks are overrated and overpriced. I think it's really the mindset of the person that's getting into the breaks, right? And how much you want to dive into it and anything like that. You got to find the right breaker. You got to find someone that's not overpriced or doing ridiculous things. I mean, we constantly see in sports card news breakers getting ousted for doing weird, ridiculous things. Luckily, in wrestling cards, I think there's a strong community of reliable breakers that we found, and whether they're in small Facebook groups or we're finding them on Whatnot through the podcasts we listen to and everything like that. P Bear obviously being a super trustworthy source, super fair with his pricing and everything like that. Always willing to cut deals with people too. I don't think it's overrated, overpriced. I think it's important to, as a person that collects, specific wrestlers, it's a great way to get an opportunity to get Dynamite cards. That's the only way I have a Bianca Belair Kaboom, and the only way I would have gotten that is through a break. I don't think I would have dished out the cash to purchase something ridiculous like that. So I don't think they're overpriced and overrated.
I don't think they're overrated, but you have to be careful with them. I think there are some breakers out there that are only out there to make a quick buck. And you can see that by the way that they're pacing through case after case really quickly, constantly on a push, push, push. And I think if you're after someone in particular, I think you can fall into a trap quite quickly, especially on these big breaks of an evening. So I think you have to be careful with who you're picking and what you're going to be buying from as well. But I think, because Graeme said, I think if you're after something particular and you've got, if the card's $100 to buy, then I don't see no issue also spending $100 on those people. And I would imagine you'd probably get your money back if you were to spread your bets across multiple breaks and stuff. So I think there's definitely a market there. But I'm always one who has always preferred a Raz. I've always liked the idea of like pick your spot and then you sort of random it a bit more. And I feel like you get a better rod doing that. And I've had much more results on a Raz than anything I've got on a break. I've had more misses breaking than I have on any Raz. And again, shout out to P Bear, because in those early days of CFP and those Razzies, they were a go to me. Like, that was all I spent my wrestling card money on, was doing P Bear's Razzies. And I've got so many cards from that. So yeah, I think breaking's got its place, but I don't know if it's overrated or not.
I don't think it's overrated. I think it definitely has its value and its purpose in the hobby. I think it can be overpriced, and that's something I would just say in the beginning of a release, just to be careful of. I think we all saw the debacle that happened with first year Prism in WWE, when people were spending over $90 a pack, on Prism, and they were getting a red ruby and a silver, whatever silver Prism, and it just people were taking baths from that. And I think that just it's a warning tale, just to be careful with knowing the market and knowing the hobby and knowing what is worth, what's something's worth and what it's not. But in the sense of being overrated, I think it's definitely got its value. There are a lot of product out there that's overpriced in terms of the hobby box in general. It's not easy to rip on a budget anymore. Most boxes, especially here in the States, are over $100, $150 to $200, most of them average. And with multiple releases, throughout a month, if you collect more than one sport, it's very hard to rip on a budget. So that's where I think the breaking has done wonders, because most people don't PC everything, so you can really hone in on what you PC, and you can buy a spot at a much cheaper price than it would be to break. You get everything from that box. And then, like what Graeme said, if you happen to hit a big time card that most collectors wouldn't shell out the money for initially, then it's a home run. I think it also has its benefit for the people that flip, because everyone knows what the top spots are in those breaks. So for instance, when like P Bear will do a Metal Universe break, I was actually talking to him the other day, and he was saying that MJF has been one of the number one spots that people want. So the M spot, if it's a letter break or whatever. And listen, there's no reason why a flipper or someone can't go in there, buy that spot. If they hit a big MJF, they can flip it the same way that they would do that flipping the cards out of a box they opened. They're just spending maybe a tenth of the price or a quarter of the price for that spot versus buying a case or a box. So I think it's got its benefits throughout the hobby, regardless of what you do, whether you're a flipper, a collector, or whatever. So I would say it's not overrated, but it can be overpriced at times.
Yeah, I feel like the main conversation is kind of like know your limits, and but it can be super fun. It's super fun because it's a fun card community thing to do too. Just I think we all agree that kind of like watch your limits, but it's a super fun time.
I think as well is trust the community as well. Like if a breaker that's got a good reputation, that reputation is all across the hobby, and you've only got to reach out to variety of people and get a good litmus on who's good pricing, who's not that so good, who even ships badly and doesn't ship badly. And I think we're kind of over the rough ground now. I think a lot of people know how Whatnot and things work now, so I think that's a lot better than it was, say, 12 months ago. And I think, again, it goes back to that whole Panini thing. It's whether or not that improves or continues to get better as we go into a new phase of card collecting, because this has all been fairly new. But yeah, I think, watch your limits. But I don't see any reason why it's overrated. I think it's just overpriced, and just keep an eye on it, really.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think, at the end of the day, this is, a form of gambling, whether you're opening a box or you're jumping into a break. At the end of the day, it's the luck of the draw a lot of the times. And, it's about just being smart, knowing your limits, knowing who the better breakers are, who the trusted people in the community are. And like I like what Graham said too. It could be a lot of fun. A group of guys just hanging out, ripping some boxes and picking who they want, and getting hits that they normally wouldn't have been able to afford. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing, but you have to be careful.
Just to finish this conversation too, I one time heard a magician say there's a Tiger King in every industry.
Boom.
I would agree with that.
I agree. I disagree with this completely. I think that if you're a collector and you're not worried about selling on, I think like as a master collector, like I have to get all these things. So again, going to some of these fleer sets, the promo stuff actually makes up part of those final checklists. The magazine cards, okay, they're not the most expensive cards in the world, but they're a nice thing to have if you can get them in a good condition. You've got the full set. And I think it's that challenge of collecting something like that where it's an ongoing thing. I've got some cards that I've been, at DVDs that have been, from the early 2000s that were only like a Best Buy release. We've got to buy 9 DVDs from Best Buy that had those in. It's like trying to still get them is an absolute nightmare, but it's that chase of trying to get those things. So I think it's that fun of trying to collect cards and the thrill of the chase. I think that's where it lies with those types of things.
Yeah, I don't think it's a novelty. I think it's legit. I think first of all, it's your collection, so it's your decision what you want to collect, what you deem as collectible, or if you deem as legitimate in terms of industry wide. Listen, if PSA or Beckett will grade it, then to me it's legit, and I know that they've graded a lot of that stuff in the past. So to me that counts. While in my own collection, I don't necessarily go that route. I tend to go more of the pack pulled, Topps, Upper Deck, Fleer, Panini, legitimate card company created stuff. I'm not as much into like the magazine stuff and all that. But listen, it's a trading card. It's collectible. It could be graded. To me, it counts.
WWF magazine cards represent. Come on. I don't think it's a novelty. I think they're trading cards. If you think about trading cards and the whole, it's a childhood element thing that it's a piece of cardboard that's pack pulled or something, or it comes out of a magazine or something. It's the spirit of trading cards, I think, from where they come. It's a fun thing like that. And for me personally, I'm a huge collector of the WWF magazine cards because looking at that set, that is something I think it's incredibly hard to complete a set of those cards that are in okay condition. A lot of those cards are curled or wrecked or ruined, and I think it just makes these cards more rare and more hard to seek out. There's specific issues of the magazines too that I guess either maybe they were less printed or people have kept them and they've got them signed in their collections or something like that. And there's certain like sections of the cards that are just really hard to find now. They're just really hard to find. And then if we look at the promo cards that come, I remember you get some of the cards inside of a video game too. You get some exclusive Topps cards in a video game. I think that's just awesome. It just instantly more rare and exciting and collectible. And if you're someone that's doing a rainbow or completing a full set, doing a master set, it's something that has to be added in there. But I'm a big fan of these magazine sets. But I think if we're talking about magazine sets, it has to have the commitment behind the magazine though too, not just like although some of the you get a one sheet sometimes in like a video game manual, that's kind of exciting, but I think if you have like ongoing set in the WWF magazine, that's so exciting because they've committed to the set, and that makes it a true trading card set to collect and complete.
I think we all agree, right? It's pretty legit.
Yeah. I think if we're doubting the legitimacy of it, then you'd have to rule out these 1993 WCW annual cards, which are renowned to be those massive cards of like Austin, Foley, Jushin Liger. You're going to discount them, or the 82 All Stars, weren't they a magazine card as well, weren't they? So how can you say they're a novelty when they're the most holy grail cards that some people want to collect of vintage? So I think we have to strike out it is not a novelty at all.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would think too, in other sports, this is obviously more prevalent, but the Sports Illustrated for kids cards have always had a pretty strong place within the hobby. A lot of quote unquote rookies that are in those sets. People collect them. People spend a lot of money on them, especially in a good graded condition. So if it counts for a Sports Illustrated for Kids issue, it has to count for a WWF magazine. It's the same exact setup. It's the same exact style of card. So
I think the Shield agrees on this one.
Yep.
My name is Graeme. I am based out of Canada, Brantford, Ontario, Canada. And if you want to check out my wrestling card collection, which contains things like Jerry the King Lawler, Bianca Belair, Montez Ford, and WWF magazine cards, represent. Follow me on Instagram at Wrestling Card Wizard. And if you have like an event that you want to add magic to and you live in Southern Ontario, follow me at Gramazing.
So my name is Johnny Tancredi, part of the Card Foundation podcast. You can find more information on our podcast on Instagram at Filthbomb Wrestling and on Twitter at CardFoundPod. New episodes drop each and every Thursday/Friday on the Major Pod Network. We basically do debates like this every single week, and we talk about the new releases, and we talk about lately we're doing some vintage stuff just because of the lack of releases lately, but we do a rookie talk each week where we debate rookie cards. We do questions of the week. We have a Patreon. Feel free to support if you want. There's a great Facebook group that we've developed over there. I'm looking forward to the growth of this new brand that we've created, and I'm looking forward to future episodes.
I'm Jamie Stocker. You can find me over on Twitter. I'm at Jamie Stocker. You can check out the Square Circle Relics podcast. Comes out every fortnight. Should normally be in your inbox on a Friday, so do check it out. Three guys over in the UK chatting all things cards. We do a top 5 run through the weekly news and just generally have a bit of fun every fortnight, so come check us out over there. And again, you can find me over on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well. Just search for Jamie Stocker Insta, and come find us wherever you listen to your podcast.
Bye, boys.
See you later.
Thank you so much, everyone. And don't forget to hit subscribe and keep following The Run-In. Is that
See
it?
you next time.
All right. We did it. What do you guys think? We got 3 minutes left in this meeting. What do you guys think?